Welcome into the Scene Project Sports Network. I am your host, Bubba Startz, and with me today, longtime baseball writer, Ken Davidoff. Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Bubba.
Yeah, well, from covering the Yankees to now the little old Scene Project Sports Network, here we are. I appreciate you spending some time with me today.
Good to be here.
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about your book, 101 Lessons from the Dugout today. And we're obviously going to talk about your storied career as a writer on the New York baseball beat. But before we get into all of that, just kind of want to give you a few moments. Give us a little bit of your backstory, and then we'll pick it up from there.
Sure. Born in Queens, New York, grew up in Edison, New Jersey. From a very young age, I knew that I loved baseball, but couldn't play it well enough to pursue that line of work. But I love to write. So by the age of 7, I decided I'm going to write about baseball, and specifically, I wanted to cover the Yankees. I was able to attain that dream. 1998, I covered the Yankees for the Bergen Record in New Jersey. Pretty good year to cover the Yankees. And moved from the Bergen Record to Newsday on Long Island, was their Yankees beat writer, then their baseball columnist, and then I moved to the New York Post as their baseball columnist. And in 2022, as I hit age 50, I decided I was burnt to a crisp, didn't want to do it anymore, quit. And since then, I have enjoyed life off the hamster wheel. I am promoting this new book, as you mentioned, 101 Lessons from the Dugout, and I'm also an adjunct professor at a college in Massachusetts.
So cool. Dreams do come true, right, Ken? Not without a ton of work that you put in to get yourself there. Just incredible. So congratulations to you for having a dream and really, chasing it. I think that's a lesson number one that we can all take from your life is, hey, if you want something, it is achievable, even if it's, writing about one of the most historic franchise in all of Major League Baseball.
Yeah. I mean, it was like you said. I definitely worked hard, and I definitely got some breaks. There's no doubt about it. But I do preach that dreams can come true if you work hard enough.
Well, and exactly. I think we make our own luck in that. When you work hard, the breaks come for you. You can't sit idly around and expect things to happen for you and to you. And sometimes bad things happen to good people who are working their butt off. But you got to be able to push through all of that. And I'm sure there's been a great amount of perseverance throughout your career, as working for several different things, just getting access, getting people to trust you, I think is something that maybe a lot of people that aren't in the publication or broadcasting business, that these athletes and these personalities inside of professional sports, especially, I don't think that they're not wired to trust the media in any aspect. So talk a little bit about, earning that trust as a young man, beginning your writing career and kind of starting from there.
Yeah, Bubba, I will say, and I agree with your assessment. I think that ability to gain people's trust has gotten much harder because of where we are as a country and a world. And I think it was easier when I started in the mid to late 90s. And really, it was just a matter of, you said, showing up, like just being there every day and not being like, gimme, gimme, gimme. Like, what can you do for me? Like just establishing a relationship and speaking to people as human beings and, just making small talk and expressing interest. And as opposed to just like, okay, this is what I need you to do for me today.
Can you describe for, our listeners and viewers, I think what we see of the media, and especially because most of the clips that we see come out are that media scrum, right? The post-game interviews or the press conferences and things, but that's such a small part of what your day is and maybe what your relationships are, inside of that building. Can you give us a little bit of insight into what it's really like being a beat reporter, especially in that New York market?
Sure. Well, the word beat reporter, the term beat reporter, I think comes from, policemen and women beat, just patrolling the neighborhood. And that's what your job is to do as a beat reporter, whether it's sports or any other arena. It's to get to know people And you're 100% right, probably. You don't get to know people on a scrum. There are times when a scrum is necessary because people want to talk to the same person, but a scrum should reflect the work that you've already done, to establish trust with that person. So again, it's starting from day one. It's introducing yourself to that person, expressing interest in that person, and letting them know, hey, I'm going to be around. And I would always say, hey, if you ever have a problem with me, let's talk. I'm human. I'm going to screw up, but I'm open to criticism and to talking things through. So it was just a matter of building up that trust and with volume, just and in terms of sports, in terms of baseball, it meant like doing the road trip in Kansas City, and then that stands out when you're one of 8 in Kansas City, and then you're one of 50 in New York. Then the players remember the 8 who were there in Kansas City. That has value, that has meaning.
So did you travel with the team all season during your time?
Not literally with the team, like not on the same plane, but
right. But you were traveling as they were on the road trips
oh yeah,
as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this new life of being on a perpetual book tour and going from hotel room to hotel room is very familiar to you.
Oh yeah, and it's much easier because I work days now. Like I'm not. When you cover sports, you're working when everyone else is off. And it's just there's nothing less healthy than covering a night game in Kansas City, checking into. And I'm not picking on Kansas City. I love Kansas City, but checking into the Kansas City Airport Marriott at 1 a.m. and getting the 4 a.m. wake up call because you have to catch your flight to Dallas. Bubba, that is not healthy.
Not one bit. And you're not flying private in the team
jet. No.
I think there's so much insight into that whole world. And as someone who's very new to broadcasting and being invited into a few of these press conferences, and I'm not covering the Yankees, right? I got to cover a PGA Tour of Champions event. I had the pleasure of, interviewing Sir Nick Faldo, and Chris Carter and Rondé Barber were there for a little celebrity thing they were doing. But the stress of just being in this room because I have no relationship with them, and all of a sudden I'm trying to come up with questions on the fly because I didn't even know I was going to be there. It's stressful. And on top of the travel that you're doing, and, if the team's not doing well, you're going to have guys that are a little bit salty and probably don't want to talk to you, but you still have a duty as your reporter and you have to do your job. Talk about that a little bit, and maybe one specific moment in your career that you can kind of dig into a little bit. That was, you knew the guy wasn't going to want to talk to you about it, but you got to get the story anyway. Kind of an overview of that, and then maybe one example that you may have.
Yeah, it's a really interesting question, Bob. I think no one else has asked me that on my marathon tour. And you're 100% right. Was my job to report the news and to provide honest analysis. And I will say a majority of the people in baseball, and I think in the sports world, get it. They get what your job is. And with your specific question, it's interesting. Like I remember there was a player on the Mets, Ike Davis, and he was really struggling. He had some real high moments, but all then got injured and was never the same. And it reached the point where the Mets had to send him to the minor leagues, even though he was a pretty established major league player. And I remember writing the column, like, yeah, it's time to send him down to the minor leagues. And I remember I think Ike might have either he didn't talk, or I can't remember the specifics, but I remember calling Ike's agent, like, hey, just a heads up to you and Ike, like I have to write this column. And I had a good relationship with Ike's agent, Lou John Nero, and he said, yeah, I get it. It's okay. But thank you for the heads up. So that was the way, in my opinion, the best way to do that. And I want to quote a former New York Post colleague of mine, Andrew Marchand, who now writes for The Athletic. He says, you want to have the argument with someone before you publish, not after you publish. And that was just such great advice and a great way of putting it, because if you can send that column or record your hot take or what have you, having already had the discussion with the subject of your commentary, then you're going to sleep better.
Well, and you're not doing it to be a jerk, but the story is the story. If you have a
Right.
top guy out there who's not performing and that time has come, it's your job and you have to do it to put that story out there. Otherwise, your readers aren't going to trust you, right? And nobody's going to read the stuff that you're putting out there. I agree with you wholeheartedly that you would rather have that conversation with them and go, look, I have to write what I have to, but forewarning, this is coming out and you're going to have an opportunity to maybe put eyes on it. You're not going to be able to necessarily change anything about it, but at least you know what it's coming out and you're not getting it in the scrum the next day. And somebody's going, hey, Ken wrote about, this about you. You don't want those relationships. And especially for someone like you that, you'd had achieved your dream. You've gotten there. You're not trying to get knocked off that pedestal for one reason or the other, whether it's not doing your job or it's having a guy, get so mad at you. You don't know who he knows either.
Right.
And being able to say, hey, you know what? This guy's done in this town, especially with a city like New York.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Look, I did have incidents early in my career where I didn't follow that wisdom, or I didn't have the argument before. And it cost me. It wasn't fatal, but it created damage that I had to repair.
It's such a crazy world in sports media. And I think it's changed so much from when you started in the late 90s to now. Culture has changed. Outrage is such a commodity now almost, right? Most of the sports shows that we see. What have you seen on your end? And are people, is there less class maybe from the writers and reporters now than maybe there used to be, and that code isn't followed like it was, when you started your career?
I'm sorry, Bubba, less class, did you say?
And maybe class is the wrong word, but a little less, adherence, I guess, to the code, right?
Oh, yeah. So, Bubba, if you gave me the time, I could give you 1,000 reasons why I quit my career. And I would say in the top 10 was what you're talking about. And because I do think there's been that, what's the word? Of course I'm blanking out. But yeah, what you said, the idea that there used to be this mutual respect and understanding. And I think a lot of that, unfortunately, has been torn away. And, again, I think that reflects greater trends in our country and our world. But I think also specifically with sports and sports media, there has been the rise of the hot take. Like someone, whether it's on ESPN or whatever streaming service, just spouting off on something where they haven't had the argument beforehand, where they haven't necessarily done their homework, and they're just looking to get attention. And look, that's been a very successful way to establish yourself in sports media. And to be frank, it sickens me. It's just the opposite of how I was raised. I remember I would in my later years, I would write a column, I post it on Twitter, and I made the mistake of reading the comments. And, someone would say you're wrong about this. And I would write back that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying this. And the person would say, well, that's not much of a hot take. And I would say, I'm not trying to do a hot take. I'm writing a column. So that sequence was, as I said, out of 1,000, probably number 7. Yeah, you're right.
And it's changed so much. And grew up, I'm from Chicago, so we've had some of the best reporters and some really good times and some really bad times. And now it just seems like in our world that everyone wants to kick you when you're down, and they want to tear you down when you're on top. And that's become very successful for some. I would even call them some of your contemporaries, right? Mm-hmm. That are making significant livings off of the hot take and having that out there. And I think that real sports journalism has been to the detriment for it.
I agree 100%. And that is, again, one of the top reasons why I'm no longer doing it. I thought that my skill set had been, the value had gone down. And I want to stress, I was writing for the New York Post, they valued my skill set. And they would have kept me on board, I think, for a while longer. But I just felt like in the greater ecosystem that was sports media, my skill set was not being valued the same way.
Yeah, and I think it's so unfortunate because you don't get to the heart of the story with a hot take and putting someone on the defensive and being able to do that. And what I appreciate about humans is that we are layered. We do have so much going on, and I think that's, you know, part of what why I have such a passion for podcasting now. I don't have a communications or broadcasting background at all. I was welding in a factory a few years ago, Ken, but I was very passionate about just human beings, getting to know people, and I felt like that's what sports journalism, especially, we wanted to know the man or the woman behind the player that we saw out on the court. And I just don't feel like that happens enough these days. Now, a lot of players have taken it upon themselves to become their very own, you know, starting their own podcast and letting you behind the curtain themselves. And a huge kudos to them, not letting someone else, you know, dictate the narrative, as it were.
I agree with you, and it's a natural outgrowth of the way the media landscape has evolved, right? Like it used to be, old adage used to be, don't challenge people who buy ink by the ton, you know, and of course that's an extremely dated aphorism, you know, because even the New York Post, which is doing very well as a legacy medium entity, is doing that because it has learned how to adapt to the digital media world. And the ink isn't quite as important as it used to be. And I forgot where I was going with this. What was the question again?
It doesn't matter. Let's talk about the book, Ken, because that used a little bit of ink. You've been out shopping it around. You were out in Cooperstown very recently, getting to rub elbows and talk with a lot of guys that I'm sure, you know, you spent the better part of the last, you know, almost 30 years building relationships with, and getting to reconnect with some of these. I mean, that had to be a thrill for you. And especially, I mean, Reggie's got to be at the top of that list, Mr. October. And I know that he was even gracious enough to write a little excerpt in your book. So what was really the impetus for you to write the book? I know you'd kind of left, and obviously a guy that's lived a life that you have probably has several books inside of him yet and all the stories you could share. But what was it about, you know, this particular topic and how this book came about that had to be done?
Yeah. So, Bubba, just for your viewers and listeners, the elevator pitch for this book, 101 Lessons for the Dugout, it is written for young adults, young players, and their parents, grandparents, and coaches about the life lessons you can learn from baseball and softball. It's 101 bite-sized pages, bite-sized chapters, 1 to 2 pages a piece. And I co-wrote it with a pediatrician and a parenting expert named Harley Rothbart. And then there's a foreword by legendary New York Met David Wright. And what appealed to me about this, it was so different than anything else I had done in my career. Because again, if I was going to have to write one more column on what's wrong with the Yankees, they've lost 5 of 7, you know, like I was going to stick a paper clip in my eyeball or something, you know, like I couldn't do that anymore. And along comes this opportunity because Harley and I have the same literary agent, Lisa Leshny. She paired us up. And Harley came up with this idea. Harley, as I said, pediatrician. She really just locked into how kids think. And Harley also loves baseball and softball. So he used baseball and softball as a tool to help his patients navigate life. You know, like remember when this happened in the game, you can also use that in the rest of your life. So this book is his baby. And then I was invited and honored and excited to be his collaborator because I could infuse the book with my knowledge of baseball at the highest level, whereas his knowledge was more grassroots. So we were just a really nice blend and a nice pairing. And part of the reason I've been so happy promoting this is because I'm tired of knocking elbows with people. I'm tired of controversy. You know, I enjoyed it while it lasted, and it was a good run that I'm proud of. But I'm really proud now to hopefully introduce a little more positivity into the world.
I absolutely love that. So many of the lessons that I've learned in my life came from sports. I was a 3-4 sport athlete through high school. Didn't have the opportunity to play much after that. I was never good enough either, Ken, even though I might have dreamed of playing one day. But the lessons that I took away from it, and the camaraderie, and just everything about sports, there's so much to be gained from that. And I think even though, even if your child isn't going to be that star athlete, that it's good for them to play these sports. So I love that you guys came together on the book to put that in print fashion, and hopefully it inspires parents to put their kids in when maybe it's obvious that Timmy isn't going to be a star pitcher, right? He's probably not making it to the MLB, especially in young youth sports, amateur sports. That's not the important part, right? Yes, some of these athletes will go on to have careers, maybe get to play at the collegiate level, and then a very small percentage of them may get to go and play pro. But it's about the lessons that you're learning about yourself and about life that can serve you for the rest of your time here on this earth.
You nailed it, Bubba. This is exactly what this book is about, because in this world there is so much focus on outcomes, right? Okay, what are we getting out of this? Is little Timmy going to be able to pitch for Division III college? And what we're urging is there are other outcomes. Like they're beyond whether Timmy makes it to college ball. Is Timmy becoming a better person from the time he is spending playing this game? Is he making friends? Is he learning lessons? And that's what we're trying to inject into this conversation.
And most of those lessons don't come from winning, right? They come from the L's that you take, the benching that happens, the moments where you may have failed, but knowing that you're going to get another opportunity in that. There's so many. I mean, you probably could have wrote the book 1,001 lessons from the Dugout.
That'd be a long book,
a much longer book.
I'd be like War and Peace.
I think it's incredible, the idea that you've had and bringing it to fruition. Talk a little bit about that, having a co-writer and kind of working on this together. I've written what words in the form of a book, I think is how my friends took it. It hasn't been published or anything to that level, but I can speak to what it's like to have to sit down in front of a computer and do that myself. What's it like to kind of write with someone else and to take, as you put it, kind of their baby and their idea and to be the contributor to that?
Yeah, so I'm always a cards on the table person, Bubba. So that's why I want to make clear to people. It's not like Harley and I were sitting in a room, like if you're a Seinfeld fan, like when George and Jerry wrote the sitcom and they're like, how should we start this? And there's all this, they take a nap, like there was nothing like that. Harley had a manuscript written, and then I came in and kind of, just performed surgery on it, and then he came back with his notes and we went back and forth. Believe it or not, Bubba, Harley and I have never met. I live in New York City. Harley lives in Denver. So we've just got connected by our agent, Lisa, and then it's been Zooming and FaceTime and texting and emails and phone calls. So maybe someday we'll meet. But it was very fruitful and healthy because I think of the respect we had for each other. And I mean this sincerely. Like, I just had such respect that he had come up with this idea in the first place, and with such really beautiful ideas. And I'll just to give you one example, like chapter 51, the stretch at first. And this is kind of like the flux capacitor moment of the book, if you're a Back to the Future fan, hopefully.
Oh, of course.
Yes. So, first baseman, has to stretch, right, to help out the infielders. And sometimes the infielders' throw is so bad that you have to leave the bag altogether, just corral the ball to prevent further damage. So Harley had a patient who was a first baseman, also hanging out with a bad crowd of friends. And, the parents clued him in. And so he said to the young man, you know what it's like to play first base, and it seems to me you're stretching awfully a lot, to meet these people where they are. This crowd, you're stretching so far that you're coming off the bag altogether. And that registered with the young man. Like, oh yeah, okay, now I get it. Like, yeah, I probably shouldn't be hanging out with this crowd. So just the creativity and the connectivity it takes to come up with that idea, and 100 others, I was really into it. And then I think Harley respected my just knowledge of the game. I covered the game at the highest level. that does bring with it some distinct knowledge. So there were some notes I had on some of the stuff he had written about the game itself. So we blended those two perspectives. And again, I'm very proud with how it turned out.
Just incredible. And humans have been learning through allegory and analogy for time memoriam, right? Since we have invented language, I think that through stories and through finding things that relate, especially to young children, you have to find that way to relate. You can't have those adults, so you have to find that something. And who doesn't love baseball, right? I think it's one of the most accessible sports for young people to get into. You don't have to be tall. You don't have to, like a basketball or super athletic. Everyone can learn how to hit a ball off a tee. And I think that's why it's great that you guys came together on this book. You got to talk about a sport that you've obviously been in love with your whole life, but like you said, got to cover at the highest level with some of the greatest players to ever play the game. Give me a quick one bit before I let you go. I'd be remiss. I mean, who was of those World Series dominating Yankees teams, who was your favorite one to get a chance to speak with on a regular basis?
I would have to say from the dynasty years, like 96 to 01, I would say Jorge Posada, because he was just so authentic. And Jorge did not have a fake bone in his body. If he was pissed at you, he'd let you know, but also understood the obligation he had. And I think that's why, beyond his production, which was excellent, why Yankees fans loved him so much, like that authenticity and the fire he showed on the field and in the clubhouse as well. Just always honest. And so he would have to be my favorite.
Yeah, a very New York guy.
Yeah, man. Born in Puerto Rico, but certainly of New York.
Awesome, Ken. Well, I know you got a jet, you got books to sell and planes to catch. It's been an absolute pleasure getting to spend some time with you. I hope we have a chance to bring you back maybe on some more of our baseball coverage in the future once you slow down a little bit. Hope to catch you out there on the road, maybe at one of your book signings. I'm looking forward to not just reading the book myself, but giving it to my young children and letting them gain some lessons from you and Harley as well. Everyone can go check out the book, 101 Lessons from the Dugout, available on Amazon. And we're going to share a link in the show notes as well. You guys can go buy it directly from them. Make sure to follow Ken, all the social media, Ken Davidoff. Davidoff is Davidoff. And really just, I'm so grateful to you. You didn't have to come and spend some time with me today. I hope that we help you sell a couple of books from the end of this, but really grateful to spend some time with you talking baseball, Ken.
Bubba, great getting to know you. There's cards on the table. As I said, I had no idea what this meeting was going to be, but I was like, what the heck? As you said, put yourself out there, right? Go get it. So thank you for your time and pleasure getting to talk to you here.
You as well. Everybody, make sure you follow along on the show and go give Ken a follow as well. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. It belongs in baseball TikToks. Yeah. Head to the back and I'm stepping with a